Hey, good morning, everybody. 10 Tampa Bay meteorologist Grant Gilmore here with you, checking in from the Weather Center. Hopefully, you're having a good Wednesday so far. A lot to talk about out in the Atlantic. We've got several systems that have the potential for development, and actually, two of them have a good likelihood of becoming at least a tropical depression over the next few days, if not a hurricane. One of these very well could become a hurricane before the weekend is all said and done, and that'll be something to keep an eye on. At least for the Atlantic Ocean, I'll just put out there off the top. None of these look to threaten the United States, which is good news, but of course, it has been eerily quiet out in the Atlantic for the last several days. So, well, for the last really month and a half now. We have to go back to July 3rd since the last time we had a named system out there. So let's just give you a quick rundown of what we have, and then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what the deal is with any one of these potentially developing. First things first, let me show you this. This is kind of an interesting stat as we wrap up August. There has been only two other Augusts or two other years where the month of August has not seen a named system. Now, this is going back to 1950. Really, anything before that, records are a little bit suspect just because it's before the satellite era, before we really had good record-keeping capabilities of what was going on in the Atlantic Basin. So we like to use 1950 as kind of a marker, and honestly, it's a generous marker. That satellite era for weather tracking, or at least hurricane tracking, goes back to 1970. So 2022, this year, will likely be just the third time that August has not seen a named storm in the Atlantic. In fact, like I was just mentioning, you have to go back to July 3rd for the last time that we actually had a named storm, and that was Colin. Since then, nothing. I mean, radio silence, right? That's 59 straight days without a named storm. That ties for the second longest stretch in between named storms, and we haven't even seen a named storm yet. So we could very well add on to that. Even if we get a tropical depression, technically that's not a named storm. So even if we get that depression over the next couple of days, this stretch would continue until we see Tropical Storm Danielle develop. So here are the three names, or the three systems that we're watching out there. Newly designated Invest 93L out there over the north central Atlantic. Invest 91L approaching the Leeward Islands now, several hundred miles to the east. And then we have a tropical wave that just came off the coast of Africa over the last couple of days, and that one's showing some potential for development, but it really doesn't have too much time for it to get its act together. So there's how they look. There's that possibility of development. I'll put the loop back on there so you can kind of see what's happening. Invest 91L will continue to track to the north and west. Anywhere within that hashed area is where we could see that tropical development. And then Invest 93L doesn't have a huge area of development over the next 5 days, so it's not going to move a lot. It's actually along an old frontal boundary. So it's not even a tropical wave. It's just an area of low pressure that is potentially going to take on some tropical characteristics. And if it does, then it would be a tropical or subtropical depression. And then that other disturbance off the coast of Africa will track to the west, and as it moves over some cooler waters, it'll start to lose the possibility for development. Here's Invest 91L is moving to the west-northwest at 6 miles per hour. It's a fairly broad area of low pressure at this point, but it's beginning to consolidate a little bit here. And if you look at the general pattern here, this is kind of the broader area of low pressure. You can see that circulation, but within the last 12 to 20 hours, if you look right here, there is that more focused area of circulation around that low pressure system. And if you look just within the last 6 hours or so, we're starting to see more thunderstorm activity or more convection around that low pressure, and that's an indication of that it's developing, it's trying to organize, and that might be the beginning stages of the development of a tropical depression there. So watching Invest 91L. We do have some shear associated with it. You have some shear kind of, oops, wrong button there, my bad. you have some shear up on the northwestern side of it. This actually might help to vent the system or help it breathe and develop. So that shear not necessarily an hindrance at this point. The main hindrance with this system over the last couple of days has been the drier air and some of that Saharan dust that has been associated with a lot of the hurricane season so far. The Saharan dust really inhibiting a lot of the tropical development, but what we're seeing now is the Saharan dust is now starting to outrun Invest 91L. So Invest 91L sort of staying behind here, and that dry air beginning to exit to the west and outpace it. So now that the dry air is moving away from Invest 91L, it might have a little bit of a better chance for some development. And that's what we're expecting to happen over the next few days. Probably before the weekend, we'll see a depression, if not tropical storm. One trend that we've seen in the forecast models is that this curve back to the north and the northeast has been shifting more and more to the east, which would leave Bermuda in the clear. While they could still see some indirect impacts with this, in the form of some higher surf and some rip currents, but direct impacts look less likely at this point, with the curvature being more and more to the east. So something to watch there for sure, but it's certainly not an issue for the United States. All right, here's Invest 93L right now, kind of all on its lonesome out there in the north central Atlantic. Stalled out front of boundary here. Let me show you where that stalled out front is. Just to the north of it extends off of a low pressure system that's a little bit farther to the north and east, just off the coast of Portugal and Spain. But that stalled out frontal boundary is an area where we typically look for areas of low pressure to develop, and in this case it's actually trying to become a subtropical or tropical low pressure system. So right now it's really not much to look at. There it is in motion. You can see some of those thunderstorms. In fact, if I'll zoom in here just a little bit, you can see within the last 6 hours it really is starting to take on some more tropical characteristics here. Now, let me show you this. I'll kind of point that out. You've got the thunderstorm activity closer to that low, and then an extension of that are those showers and storms as well. And that is more of a subtropical signature, where you see some of those thunderstorms and the wind field probably extending beyond the center of that low. So this is probably shaping up to be more of a subtropical storm as opposed to a purely tropical, where you see the strongest winds and the convection really concentrated over the center of that low pressure system. But still, regardless, it very well could become a depression and maybe even a tropical storm if those wind speeds get a little bit higher. Right now the wind speed's only at 30 miles per hour. We'd have to get the wind speeds up to closer to 40 miles per hour for it to actually be a storm. So watching it there, but again, no issue to the United States. More of an issue potentially for Portugal if it continues to the east, potentially visiting parts of Europe into next week. Let me just show you all of the Atlantic here, okay? So we're going to highlight on every single one of the systems that we just talked about. You've got this right here would be Invest 91L. Up here is Invest 93L. And then this is the tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa. So I'll run the GFS model into the future here. You see that tropical wave off the coast of Africa quickly has this chance in this window of development before the weekend, before it starts to move into some cooler waters, into less favorable conditions. So if it develops, it's got about 72 hours to do so. And after that, it doesn't happen. And then we see 93L trying to develop there by Friday, and then that actually kind of stalls out. It very well could be that subtropical or tropical storm through the weekend, and then 91L also getting its act together as we head through the weekend, and then by Monday, we very well could have two named systems out in the Atlantic. If you believe the GFS model, you would have the one over the north central Atlantic, and then you have the one just northeast of the Caribbean and south of Bermuda. Both of those systems, again, curving away and tracking to the east and staying over the open waters of the Atlantic, and again, potentially heading out towards Portugal. So not a concern for us at this point, but an indication that the tropics are beginning to wake up a little bit and show some signs of what you would typically expect, right, for this time of the year, which would be some activity, which we haven't had any activity since the beginning of July, which haven't heard anybody complain about that. So we're, we're in good company there. All right, that's it, guys. Just a quick check on the tropics there. 3 systems to watch, 2 of which could be named systems or at least tropical depressions over the next 5 days. We will have more right here on Facebook, YouTube, as well as 10tampabay.com. So keep checking back for those updates, and we'll be sure to pass them along to you as they come down. Take care. Have a good Wednesday.